Hello and welcome to Telesur English. I am Estefania Bravo in Quito, Ecuador. This is from the south. During a radio interview, Cliver Alcalá Cordones, a deserter of the National Bolivarian Armed Forces of Venezuela, implicated in coup plotting attempts against the Maduro government, claimed that opposition lawmaker Juan Guaidó participated in the buying of arms in order to destabilize Venezuela.
In the contract signed by President Guaidó and the American advisors, it was said that the purchase of the weapons were property of the Venezuelan people to fight for freedom. These weapons were not for committing crimes or to arm gangs. They were packed in such a way to be later used in a location of the Venezuelan Guajira for a military operation against the Maduro dictatorship.
But if Colombia has never made public its desire to oust Maduro through the military option, just as the United States did, are you confirmed that Colombia took part in the purchase of these weapons for a military action in Venezuela?
Neither the Colombian government nor President Duque participated. The purchase of these weapons was the sole purpose for this contract signed between President Guaidó and American advisors.
Alcalá stated that from Colombia, a new coup d'etat is being planned against President Nicolás Maduro, which corroborates the accusations made by the Bolivarian government.
It was planned in Colombia, but the Colombians didn't take part in planning it. The plan was devised between American and Venezuelan advisors.
With the knowledge of Colombian authorities?
I reserve the right to answer.
Venezuelan Foreign Minister Jorge Arreaza responded to the charges filed by the U.S. against Venezuelan authorities for alleged links to drug trafficking.
The Bolivarian Republic of Venezuela denounces that during the times where humanity is dealing with one of the greatest pandemics in its history, the government of Trump attacks, once again, the people of Venezuela, using a new way of implementing a coup d'etat, using miserable, vulgar, unfounded accusations that try to minimize Venezuela's effort against drug trafficking. The policy of a regime change in Venezuela is destined for failure. Offering a reward shows Washington's desperation and its obsession against Venezuela. The White House's frustration is due to the peace that governs Venezuela today, where the country's authorities have controlled all coup attempts and destabilization attempts, planned and financed by the United States against the Bolivarian nation. Likewise, the government of Donald Trump does not accept the fact that the government of Nicolás Maduro is handling very well the threats of the COVID-19 pandemic, while the U.S. authorities have failed to do so.
Venezuela's Minister of Communications, Jorge Rodriguez, also condemned Donald Trump's attacks against Venezuela with the help of Colombian President Iván Duque and opposition lawmaker Juan Guaidó.
All these events will be written in history. It will be remembered that in the middle of the fight against this pandemic that haunts the entire world, Donald Trump's administration, alongside Colombian President Iván Duque and his puppet Juan Guaidó, insists on attacking our right for peace, life and harmony between Venezuelans. In the last 4 years, in more than 23 occasions, President Nicolás Maduro, Diosdado Cabello and myself have come before the public to denounce all coup attempts against Venezuela's democracy, against Venezuela's constitution by Barack Obama, and now in a more cruel and desperate way by the administration of Donald Trump.
The facts occur after the United States government announced measures to deepen its policy to seize Venezuela, filing charges against authorities for alleged links to drug trafficking. Among those charged are President Nicolás Maduro and 14 current and former government officials for narco-terrorism, corruption, drug trafficking, and other criminal offenses. The U.S. State Department has also offered a reward for information leading to the arrest and/or conviction of these individuals. This latest move by the Trump administration against the legitimate government of Venezuela has reignited fears of possible military intervention in the country. We'll take a short break now. Don't go away. Venezuelan Vice President Delcy Rodriguez announced one new case of COVID-19 in the country. Venezuela has now 107 coronavirus cases. Rodriguez also confirmed the first death in Venezuela, a patient who had a chronic illness. We must announce that in the last 24 hours, one new case of COVID-19 has been detected in the capital city. Venezuela now registers 107 cases of the novel coronavirus. We need to inform that Venezuela registers its first death due to the coronavirus. It has to do with a 47-year-old worker from Aragua state. We extend our condolences to his family and friends. He suffered from a chronic disease that affected his lungs. Coronavirus cases in Ecuador have risen to 1,403, while 34 people have been confirmed dead. Ecuador has the second highest number of COVID-19 cases in Latin America after Brazil. To talk more about the spread of COVID-19 in Ecuador, we are joined live by Dr. Esteban Ortiz. He's an epidemiologist and a researcher at the UDLA University in Quito. Thank you, doctor, for your time.
Hi, hello, everyone. I'm just to be accurate. I'm a master in global health.
Thank you for that correction. And now, Ecuador has the second highest number of COVID-19 cases in Latin America after Brazil, as we mentioned. The government has taken steps to prevent the spread of the virus, which includes a curfew and a state of emergency. Are these measures enough, and did the administration act soon enough?
Well, I don't think any measure were taken like soon enough. I think they were taken in advantage in relationship with other countries. We were the second country in the region with the first confirmed case, and I think the fear of every single government was to put in order very strong and strict measures. So I think Ecuador put some actions on place relatively fast, but I know in terms of this pandemic, nothing is being already fast enough, I guess, right? Right now we are waiting for the successful of the measures. Hopefully we will see a decline in the numbers of new cases, and hopefully we will control the very famous epidemiological curve that we are hoping to flatten.
Now, Ecuador's Minister of Health resigned last week, and she said there weren't enough resources to fight this pandemic, a claim that the government has since denied. You, as a medical professional, what are your thoughts on the former minister's revelations?
Definitely, I mean, I don't want to go inside very deep into the political stuff about this, but I'm sure the ex-minister, the last minister, she was involved also in taking some directions, right? I mean, like for me, it sounds like a little bit like too late to stating that there was no resources, since you saw in the news that they were allocated resources before. Now, having said that, I have to admit the public health system is being weakened in the last 2 years and a half. People got laid off. I mean, like a lot of political measures were like tackling public health jobs, especially those that were involved in epidemiological surveillance. So the public health system in Ecuador is being weakened for sure, but this is also not new. I think in the previous government, we have a lot of resources. We have a lot of equipment and new hospitals, but some of very strategic points of view that combat this type of pandemic were also weakened. So, you know, in this point, even though I'm being criticizing the current government and I'm being pointing out the lack of equipment, the lack of a CT scan in one of the main hospitals in Quito, I think for now, at this point, it will be very more valuable if we all push together in order to fight back this virus. I've been advising the government in the last maybe week and a half at no cost. I've been doing it just for the good and the sake of the people. And I think that's what everyone needs to do right now. I know there is some lack of equipment. I know there's been resources being cut off in the last years. But at this point, I'm not putting my efforts in looking backwards. I'm actually putting all my efforts to try to fight the virus back.
For sure. Now, let's talk about Guayas province, which, as we know, has the highest number of COVID-19 cases in the country, with 1,021 people falling ill. What can be done differently to prevent and to control COVID-19 in this particular province?
I mean, like, I guess it's very, it's very, a lot of like different points of view can tackle this very local problem. I think more strict measures will be taken in place soon. I think we have already like a entire lockdown for the province and the city, but I think there's also like some social determinants that are avoiding the fulfillment of the law, because Guayaquil and the cantons in the region are also very uneven in terms of access to health, access to education. So, of course, for me, it's easier to stay at home. I have Wi-Fi, I have a fridge full of food, but I'm thinking also the people who are in the coast. Some people will avoid staying inside a very warm house that has no electricity, no water, and also there's not all of the fault remain in the less favorite people. I mean, like people with a lot of resources are also violating the rules. I mean, like we saw many videos and many posts about people living in these high end condos also violating the rules. People playing golf, people kayaking in the middle of the cove. So I think it's totally unethical for someone to have education, to go outside and socialize with people. I understand the people who has less resources. I understand that some of them live with whatever they make every day, so it's a little harder to avoid that type of situation. And I will say in this point, the only option is like putting effort together, trying from the private sector and the government to help those families to stay home, reducing payments for electricity, reducing payments for water, reducing payments for debt. And at this point, I think it's also important that the banks and the people who is usually asking for our money, like to reduce the interest rates. I mean, like at this point, everyone is putting the shoulder together. So I think it needs to be like a win-win. If the banks are like keep asking for all of the money at the same rates, we'll also make a more difficult problem for the future, especially in those families that are more affected economically speaking.
Now, to understand COVID-19, the virus, a little bit more, and for our international viewers, many experts say the only way to flatten the curve is by, of course, maintaining social distancing, washing hands, and also staying at home. What other measures can also be taken, you would say?
The most important measure for me right now is to find every single case of COVID-19 in Ecuador. We need to increase the number of testing. We need to increase the number of surveillance people that is like working in the Ministry of Public Health. We need to increase the system that is controlling the patients at this point, and we need to find the way to improve diagnosis. At this point, we rely on importations. We rely on big pharma companies to provide the primers. So at this point, I think it's important to make a really good and strong connection with the academy, with the productive sector, so we can start develop our own test, maybe buying fast diagnosis test. Of course, like knowing that this test needs to have a really strict and clear algorithm or protocol. But I think increasing testing, it will be the most effective way to control or flatten the curve.
Now, I have to ask you, there are a lot of myths going around in the world saying that, for example, if I was close to a COVID-19 patient, then I may have the virus as well. What can you tell us about that? If I was close to a patient who is positive, then do I have to take the test as well, or it's only when I shook the hands with someone else?
I mean, the information of this type of measures is still scarce. There is a lot of controversy right now in Ecuador because some physicians are actually recommending to take this medication, especially hydroxychloroquine or maybe azithromycin, but there is not enough evidence to support the use of this type of medicine in patients or in doctors as a preventive or as a curative way. I totally support the fact that we need to increase research. We need to start doing clinical trials, and we need to start, applying those meds, especially when we need it. But we need to do it in the right way. We need to do clinical trials. We need to make sure that all of the ethical and regulatory facts are, fulfilled. And of course, to the people that is listening to us, this type of medication is not proved to be working right now. We are totally open as researchers to help the government to put in place these type of trials. But at this point, I won't recommend just take those medications just for the sake of prevention. There's not enough evidence to support this fact at this point.
Esteban, we thank you so much for your time for Telesur English, and we hope to speak to you very soon.
Yeah, Cynthia. Have a good one, everyone.
That was Esteban Ortiz from Quito to talk about the coronavirus situation in Ecuador. Moving on, the latest report on the spread of the COVID-19 virus in Chile revealed the South American nation now has over 1,300 confirmed cases. On Thursday, the country's Minister of Health reported a fourth COVID-19 death. The minister also reported that there are 4 patients in serious condition, 3 of which are older adults. Chilean authorities imposed a mandatory quarantine in 7 states starting Thursday for 7 days. Brazilians continue to express their anger against President Jair Bolsonaro's poor handling of the COVID-19 pandemic. Quarantined Brazilians have been taken to their windows and balconies for the past week to bang pots and pans and condemn the president for failing to adopt measures to tackle the epidemic. Several state governors across Brazil have adopted their own measures in the face of a lack of control by the government. The Brazilian president has aligned himself with his U.S. counterpart, Donald Trump, and continues to undermine the efforts to control the spread of the virus, claiming that the media is fueling hysteria over the pandemic. And one of the most famous stadiums in the world and a showpiece venue for the Rio Olympics, the Maracanã Stadium, will be adapted into a field hospital to treat COVID-19 patients, according to the governor of Rio de Janeiro. Meanwhile, Brazil's top football clubs are handing over their stadiums to health authorities to turn them into field hospitals and clinics to fight the coronavirus pandemic. Brazil has reported over 2,600 COVID-19 cases, but the Bolsonaro administration has prioritized the economy over the shutdowns favored by public health experts who have warned the outbreak in Brazil could trigger a total collapse of the healthcare system by next month. Jamaica's Minister of Public Health welcomed 140 Cuban medical professionals to support the island's efforts against the novel coronavirus.
I want to take the opportunity to say a big thank you to the government and the people of Cuba for being here and for sending this 140 healthcare professionals, including doctors, nurses, therapists. I think this is great for the fight against corona here in Jamaica, and we really appreciate the support, as usual, of the Cuban government and the Cuban people.
Trinidad and Tobago has recorded its first death from the novel coronavirus. The victim is an elderly man who, according to the Minister of Health, had pre-existing medical conditions. Opposition leader Kamla Persad-Bisesar has since called for a 14-day nationwide shutdown to tackle the pandemic. So far, the Caribbean island has 61 confirmed COVID-19 cases. The Cuban government has implemented numerous measures to stop the COVID-19 outbreak in the island. Let's have a look.
This is how Havana looks amid this COVID-19 pandemic. Normally busy streets are now empty. The historic boulevard without the throngs of classic cars and movie theaters are closed, as are restaurants. Havana is missing its traditionally jovial spirit.
The city is empty, it looks abandoned. People have understood they need to stay in their homes. It's good to see that everyone is taking the virus seriously.
The people support the government's decision to suspend classes for a month as teachers prepare for their eventual return to the workplace.
That was the best decision they could take because children are no longer being exposed.
Authorities have also asked that restaurants limit their capacity to 50%.
We are only serving half of our usual customers, and as soon as they enter, they wash their hands.
Places like this, where chlorine is sold at low prices, can be found all over the city. Cubans feel safe. Doctors work around the clock to find possible cases of the novel coronavirus, and information on preventative measures is available everywhere. But people say there needs to be stricter measures. In quarantine centers like this one, the government guarantees that doctors and hygienic products will be freely available daily.
Así lo asegura Isabel, esta paciente confirmada de coronavirus.
I would like to shut everyone up who are trying to take advantage of the situation and spread lies about our nation. The treatment I have received has been excellent.
Under the current circumstances, the government has assured citizens that no one will be left behind.
We'll take a short break now. Join us again after this.
Only on Telesur.
Welcome back to From the South. G20 leaders held an emergency video summit on Thursday during which they stated their commitment to a united front against the coronavirus pandemic, stressing that their absolute priority was to tackle the health, social, and economic impacts of the COVID-19 virus. Leaders of the world's major economies said they were committed to restoring confidence, preserving financial stability, and reviving growth. The leaders decided to inject over $5 trillion into the global economy. The head of the World Health Organization told G20 leaders that the pandemic is accelerating at an exponential rate and called on them to rapidly increase production on protective gear for health workers. Meanwhile, Russian President Vladimir Putin on Thursday called upon fellow G20 states to create a coordinated plan to support the global economy during the coronavirus pandemic.
All of us, the G20 as a whole, need a joint plan of action to stabilize the situation, support our economies, and restoring trust in global markets. Not less important, during the crisis period, is the creation of so-called green corridors, free of trade wars and sanctions, for the mutual supply of medicines, food, equipment, and technologies. Ideally, we should introduce a joint moratorium, waiving restrictions on supplies of essential goods, as well as financial transactions for their purchase.
Russia deployed a convoy with special equipment and medical supplies to the Italian city of Bergamo to assist efforts to contain the spread of the COVID-19 virus. The convoy includes a mobile analysis and diagnostic complex, specialized disinfection supplies, and equipment to provide medical treatment to patients in serious conditions. Russia's plane loads of aid to Italy have exposed the European Union's failure to provide swift assistance to a member state facing a health crisis. Italian authorities have expressed their gratitude for the Russian decontamination units and army medical staff sent over the past 4 days. Russia has organized at least 15 flights to Italy using military transport planes, carrying 8 medical brigades and another 100 personnel, including some of its most advanced nuclear, biological, and chemical protection troops. The European Parliament held an extraordinary session this Thursday to debate on the first 3 proposals from the European Commission to tackle the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic in EU member states. As the COVID-19 virus continues to spread around the world, Europe has become a hotspot, with Italy and Spain being the hardest hit countries. Given the circumstances, Parliament members were allowed to participate remotely for the first time. The lawmakers were set to hold a vote on the European Commission's legislative proposals, including making available 37 billion euros from the Cohesion Fund to member states, as well as extending the EU Solidarity Fund to cover public health emergencies and stopping so-called ghost flights caused by the pandemic. Italy has registered more than 8,000 deaths due to coronavirus, with 662 new fatalities in just 24 hours. Authorities have also recorded almost 4,500 new cases, with over 62,000 people infected so far.
4,492 is the increase in the number of people currently positive. The total number of people currently positive is 62,013. 33,648 are in home isolation without symptoms or with mild symptoms. And 3,612 are the patients in intensive care. Unfortunately, today also we registered 662 new deaths.
Iran has announced 157 new deaths from the novel coronavirus, raising the official number of fatalities to 2,234. This comes as the country implemented restrictions on intercity travel to try to contain the virus. So far, the total number of declared infections in Iran stands at 29,406.
With these 2,389 new cases, we now have 2,406 confirmed cases of COVID-19 infection across the country until today noon. With 157 deaths due to the COVID-19 disease, we have a total of 2,234 registered deaths.
And with that, we've come to the end of this news brief. You can find these and many other stories on our website at telesurenglish.net. And be sure to follow us on social media. We are on Facebook, on Twitter, and on Instagram. For Telesur English, I am Estefania Bravo. Until next time.